11 is wrapped and we're here to break it all down in terms of SuperCoach. We saw our highest score of around 107 and no surprises, it's Bryce Cotton. And Christian Doolittle, well, he broke some hearts this weekend as well. Hello and welcome back to the panel, your official SuperCoach NBL show. I'm Kelsey Brown. The rookie, but also someone who got their heart broken by Christian Doolittle this weekend. And another man, our first expert, welcoming him in, James Clements. JC, SuperCoach Wizard, you had your heart broken too.
I really did. Mainly it was because, I was watching this game going, okay, where's Christian? Oh. Double donuts, breaking my heart. I had a great week aside from that. I had gigs to go to. I had lots of other fun stuff, watched plenty of hoops. And then the Doolittle thing was just almost soured it completely. But, I believe I said last week, we're not dead yet. We can get better. It's going to be fine.
We can get better. Our second expert, Boydie, 1/3 of the basketball blokes. Welcome back. Did you have a good week in terms of SuperCoach?
Thank you. Yes, had a good week. I got rid of Doolittle a couple of weeks ago now, so I have been kissed the last couple of weeks, thankfully, and Pinder as well this week, so kissed there too.
We want to talk about hot and not. We get to this every single week. And the hot list this week, no doubts, Bryce Cotton, he sits at the top at 107. Casey Prather's one I want to talk about. He was my saving grace this weekend. I bought him in, and he was really impressive, JC.
He was, and it's even more impressive that I managed to screw up trading him out weeks ago, just before he made this giant leap, because I thought he'd made me enough cash. I was worried about his role. No Josh Bannon. And I feel like that's sort of the key aspect of the Casey Prather experience. He's been fantastic, but there's obviously been no Josh Bannon. So, I don't know, Boydie, can he keep this up? What do you reckon?
Well, it's a big red flag. I've got Prather, so I'm an owner. Bought him when he was a little bit cheaper, not when he was super cheap at the start of the season. But I think the no Bannon is the key at the moment. I think his last 3 games without Bannon there is averaging about 40-41. Prior to that, when Bannon was in the side, he's averaging about 23.5 SuperCoach points. So I don't expect him to keep going at the 40s once Bannon's back, but I think he looks fitter and he's playing well and grabbing boards and rah-rah-rah. So I think 30s might be kind of his average after this. So he's not so bad, but it's probably a bit of a question. If you're trading him now, maybe his price is a little bit high.
Yeah, another one that is on that list is Jack White. He's been Mr. Consistent the whole time. He's an impressive one to have, right?
Living on a prayer. I love this. We're just going always with the Bon Jovi references when it comes to Jack White at the moment. He's a 7 Nation Army, couldn't hold him back as well. He played this week as well in Melbourne. But the Jack White, he's Mr. Consistent, right? That's all he does. He just locks and loads. The double-doubles come flying out. It's the extraneous stats as well. It's like SuperCoach gold, I think, for him. It's not all just like the Bryce Cotton just scoring. Check this out. Hey, here's a couple of assists. It's kind of everything. And it makes me so happy just to have him for a double for one more week here, Boydie.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's jumping on him if you haven't got him already with the double this week for Melbourne United. He did get the 10th rebound very late in the game. He kind of saved it pretty late in the end, especially on the second game from memory. So bit of a, but I mean, as you said, Mr. Consistent.
Yeah, that's just the theatrics at this point.
Well, that's it.
He's
that's right.
This is great. Check this out.
He must have himself and his own team.
He's got a flair for the dramatic. That's what it's about.
Yes, I hate to be negative, but someone who is Mr. Consistent on maybe the not list is a Christian Doolittle, purely because of the issues that he's had injury-wise. He hit a 0 this weekend. Rocco Zikarsky, there's a few people that own him. I am also one of those. He hit a 2 this weekend. And Carlin Davison, we spoke about him last week. Massive trap. JC?
We might have nailed one. We did nail one last week. I think I've talked about the Casey Prather miss. That sucked. The other one on the hot list, Wardenberg, had a massive week. My question for last week was really Wardenberg or Humphreys, and I went Humphreys, so I missed out on probably 18 points or something. But the Carlin Davison, it's just pump the brakes on everything breakers. So it's a bit of a wordplay. But amazingly, you can just see the crush coming for the breakers. It's a lot of moving parts, and this is what we talked about last week. It's very, very difficult week to week to understand who's going to have the minutes, who's going to have the output. And Davison was probably the least trustworthy of those players, and you saw it with Max Darling coming back and playing okay. Menenga's playing really well. You've also still got Jonah Bolden and stuff in the background. And Taco as well. So you just have these moments where I just don't want to have much of the breakers on my bench. Meanwhile, I've got 4 of them.
Yeah.
The problem is their schedule's so good still for till the end of the season. So doubles everywhere still. But PJC's really the only one you can trust there, I think. And even he's had a little bit of a down turn in his form in the last couple of rounds. Rocco's that real Jekyll and Hyde with him and Tyrell Harrison. So I was a bit wary on Harrison prior to this round, but then he comes out and has a 70-odd whatever this round. So what do you have, 76? So and Rocco isn't getting the minutes or getting the output because Tyrell's getting that output and hitting it. So, he's probably a little bit too expensive now to just have him just sitting on your bench wasting away.
Yep.
But yeah.
Jordan Crawford's another one sitting on that not list. He had 12 this weekend. So another interesting one there. But let's get to the shout out twos. We've got Super Prize for John T, 641 winner this week. He had Wardenberg, JC and Harrison as centres. Cavill for Kevin, 636. Harrison as a centre, low bench centre. Low was impressive. Jackson's Court for Jackson, 635. Lowest scoring player was 35. I wish I could say that week in, week out. I had a 0, like I have mentioned. Finns for Darren, 635. Humphreys as centre, and Rexcellence for Heath, 633. Keandre Cook and Bateman as the bench guard. But I think the other thing that doesn't stand out here, but is very fitting for each of these teams, is that Bryce and PJC are their guards. Every single team that is on this top shout out to list has Bryce and PJC.
Yeah, I mean, on your show, you've got the Banksy's captains.
Yes,
Boyd.
Banksy's captains, yes.
And I have routinely missed my captain's call. I think just, if there's one thing I can actually bank on this year, it's just getting the wrong captain. This week, I actually had it on Bryce. And that's, I think, the through line that we've seen in this top 5 this week. PJC, Bryce, and if you had the C on Bryce, you're laughing. So.
Well, we don't have Bryce now for 4 weeks because they're on 4 singles in a row. So he won't be a mention on the Banksy's captains, I wouldn't have thought. PJC comes into calculations again, or does he with his lower form at the moment?
He's also got a break even of 99.
99, yeah.
So it's a bit of a tough one because you could actually look at PJC and go, do I want to trade him out for a week if you want to cash in there? He goes to that single, I think, in 2 weeks' time, and then maybe bring him back in for the stretch run. I don't know. It's a bit of a tricky one.
The shout-outs you mentioned there, a couple of them had Humphreys as that centre. A bit interesting. I brought him in as well. It sounded like you did too, James. This week, obviously, the return of Trez. Does that diminish Humphreys' role and output again, like we've probably seen a little bit earlier in the season? I think so.
Yeah.
So that's those teams that have got him at the moment, and including our teams, mate. We might be looking at different options, maybe.
Yeah, he really had to stand up in the absence of Trez. And another man that had to stand up for another team was Ben Henschel. He's actually in our most traded out. Now, is this the time to cash out on Henschel? Boydie, we spoke off air about the offense isn't going through him much anymore. The opportunities have sort of diminished for him because Bryce is scoring 7,000 points a game. So is that someone that you cash out on now?
I think so. I think he has to be in your options. If you've got, say, for example, him and Cotton, they've both got similar break-evens. So I think Cotton's is 23 and Henschel's is 21. Now, who's more likely to get that 23 or 21? Right?
Look, at a guess, the bloke who's just scoring points for fun at this point.
Probably.
Right?
He's
207 over the last 2
well,
weeks, not bad. So.
Bryce is quite easily could triple his BE this week, right? Whereas I'm not sure that Henschel's going to do that. But the yin and yang to that is that Cotton's is a lot more expensive than Henschel. So what can you do with that extra 200k odd if you're bringing someone else in? So if that means starting a Jack White, for example, rather than a Menenga, who you mentioned before, there's probably going to be benefit to that. So you've got to weigh up those two things.
The interesting thing is that the most traded out list has all Perth players. Now, Boydie, you mentioned before it's because they come into a terrible run of singles. JC, is anyone on there that stands out for you?
I think a lot of it is people are bringing in Prather. That's seemingly fine, but I'd still be like, I want to know what's happening with Josh Bannon before I bring in Prather. Especially at this price point, it's like it might be a little bit of a waste of money, perhaps. The other big question, obviously, is like, do you go Bryce Cotton to Kendrick Davis? Like, do you go, right, I trust Davis more on this one single before the awesome run of Sixers doubles, and just go, cool. Like, I've made my money from Bryce, even though he's probably got another price rise in him this week. That's probably what I'm going to have to do because I don't think I'm going to have enough trades to probably go from Bryce, fix other parts of the team. But with Davis's break even of 14, he's going to rise even more. It's going to be harder to bring him in next week, whereas Bryce has got the break even of 23. That's the big question for me for the trades in. Like, do you move on from Bryce now? Do you sit for one more week? And then the same thing goes, can you afford to not have Davis in your team at this point?
Yeah, Davis has been incredible. Boydie?
Yeah, the other Perth guys you mentioned there, they're all on the trade outs. Well, obviously, there's issues with Doolittle. He's probably going to be out for multiple weeks, it looks like. Pinder was out with illness again. And, I mean, they went from... Perth tweeted that he's possibly a game time decision for their first game of the round to an hour later a follow-up tweet saying he's out for the whole round. So I'm not sure how that escalated in the hour, but it obviously did. So I'd be a bit wary.
If you're driving the porcelain bus, like, you you can just like, yeah, I'm not playing this weekend. Sorry, boys, we're out. So.
Or is it the COVID monster coming back?
Yeah.
Where he had to be out for a certain amount of time or whatever that ended up being. And the fact is, they've got 4 singles coming up, and you've got so many better options. Also, them and Melbourne United have now played the most games, right? And we're getting to, I think it's 17. We're getting towards the end of the season, so they've only got sort of 12 games left, right? Whereas you can pick up guys from New Zealand, from Brisbane, even from Adelaide that have got that 14, 15 games to go, and that's going to make that can make all the difference, even with your bench options, right? If you got to sneaking downgrading a bench option. If they've got more games, they could still end up scoring more points than a Henschel, than a Almanza, or what have you. So
yeah, there's like guys like Mason Peatling, for instance, right? Like where you've got Henschel, it's like, if you have this DPP sort of position of swapability, you can maybe finagle that where you go, Illawarra now has like a nice run after, I think, this week. They look really, really good. Peatling's role seems to have suddenly solidified very nicely.
Into that starting.
So it makes like a little bit of sense where you can go, if I need a little bit of bench cover, I have to keep one eye sort of forward on what's going to happen from here on out. And I've got that sort of question, like, do I keep Karim Lopez and just sort of fingers crossed he's already the sort of sunk cost, he's going to lose a little bit of money here and there with a big break even? Or do I move him on and get a Peatling in there as part of a bigger trade and use my last boost possibly? So yeah, it's a lot of big questions this week. And I think we haven't even really hit on Trez. Like, I think he'll be the most traded in probably next week. I think we'll see how he goes for one more week. He has a pretty high break even. So it gets a little bit tricky to bring in Trez, even though we know he can just go bang and like drop an 80 on everybody. But he's got a break even of 58, I think it is.
58,
So I think he's only top 58 once this year. So it makes this sort of big question, like, wait and see on Trez. He has threatened to come back and just go bang. So it wouldn't surprise me as a big game, but 58, he might drop a little bit of coin this week. You might be able to pick him up slightly cheaper next week.
You mentioned Mason Peatling. 7.7% of coaches have traded him in. Kendrick Davis, 7.1% of teams have traded him in. Nick Marshall was one that you wanted to talk about, Boydie. He's an interesting one, similar to the Mason Peatling, cheap and willing to get.
That's it. So Peatling's, obviously we talked about, he's got that starting role. He's getting sort of in minutes in the teens and the 20s, right? Previously to him having that starting role, he was getting single-digit minutes, right? And obviously minutes means opportunity and performance sometimes. Marshall's been getting double-digit minutes all year, but it seems like in the last couple of rounds, without Vasiljevic in that team, and he's still out for a little while, Vasiljevic, he's been getting more output, more shots up. I think he had his most field goal attempts for the season by far in the last 2 games. So he's another cheapy option you could look at with Adelaide. Obviously, they've got a pretty decent schedule going forward as well. But Peatling, obviously, I mean, he's ticking all the boxes. He's 111k. So if you need that bench downgrade at the moment, he's probably the number one, I'd say. But don't rule out Marshall as well.
Okay, we love that. I want to get to our doubles. So we go New Zealand, Brisbane, Melbourne, and South East Melbourne all playing doubles this weekend. Making moves, guys. Are you touching anyone from these teams, or are you making different moves?
I think a lot of my point this week was having Isaac Humphries. I can do almost a straight swap to Matt Hurt if I want to do the 1 week loan and then maybe move Hurt for Trez next week. That's probably where I end up going with. But Melbourne United, if you've got Jack White, you ride him for that 1 more week. We always have the question of like which United guard's going to go off this week. It's the constant sort of frustration. I'm probably steering clear. Like Ian Clark's just like looking at me from the players rankings list going, Jim, pick me up. And I'm like, not a chance, Ian. I'm very sorry. But I think we're set up. You can keep riding, obviously, all your Brisbane. So I'll probably look to be bringing in Tyrell Harrison. I've already mentioned I'm probably going to steer clear of Prather until we know what's going on with Josh Bannon. But yeah, you've got to load. Probably keep PJC for your breakers. You're looking at Brisbane for as long as you can, and then keeping an eye on Adelaide, right? With the way the schedule's sort of set up, Brisbane, Adelaide, New Zealand sort of just become your sort of lock and loads for essentially the rest of the season.
I think KD is the number one. Obviously, they're on a single this week, but if you've got the trade to do it and you've got starters, you can sit there on doubles. I think he's probably the number one target. The BE 14, he's going to go up. You need him for the rest of the season. You can kind of play around with 3 guards with him, PJC, and maybe like a Cook or a, God forbid, a Bateman or something along those lines, right? And you can pretty much play doubles with those, start doubles all year, the rest of the year with those 3 guys, right?
You can also go crazy and go, hey, Derek Walton Jr. is really cheap.
Wow.
Hey!
Wow. What is going on with Derek Walton Jr.?
That is like wild card, baby. Bang, 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 bang. Let's see how it goes.
That's a whole another question.
I love that idea.
I mean, yeah, who knows what's going on there.
Seriously, that's just like, we're going to throw it against the wall and see what happens, right? It's like, maybe he plays this week, who knows? Like, it's going to be really fun to find out.
It's going to be super cheap, but it'll be after he plays the next game because that's going to bring down his... but yeah, who knows with that one. And then, as you mentioned, just riding the schedule. You've got Brisbane, you got Adelaide guys. I think Trez is a must trade in. Humphries is probably now maybe a trade out.
Yeah, I feel like I'll probably move on from Humphries because just with an eye to get Trez, I think he's just got that higher ceiling week to week once he's back on the doubles after next week.
White, Daly's playing good with CG43 out. He seems to have come back into the frame at the moment. So whether you go him if you need a guard option as well for a double this week, I don't mind Daly as a bit of a point of difference. And Matt Hurt's another point of difference. I think you mentioned him earlier.
Yep.
On the double this week too, so it's kind of rental week almost. If you've got the trades, it's kind of like, can we bring this guy in just for a week? Hopefully he doesn't lose cash and we can go to something else. Trez next week.
It's actually a really fun week because you have a lot of options. Like you can go, right, I'm going to base this on a matchup almost, right?
Yep.
You look at Matt Hurt and go, maybe I like this a lot. Maybe you go Trez 1 week early. Maybe you go Tyrell, and maybe you just like, no, just kick the tires on this one for a week and see what happens, and then move on. Like it's pretty fun.
I think we'll see a lot of those shout-outs next week. The teams will be probably pretty different. Like even the top 5, they might have 5 different guys that go off. Who knows? But
I hope I'm in that top 5, but we've thrown up so many names that I've just got so much to choose from. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. Amazing as always. Like I said, so much to think about for your round 12 teams. Supercoach.com.au for all of your trades, all of your stats, NBL app for all of the live scores, and we can't wait for you to join us next week. You've been with the panel. See you around.